Chair. And today we have what we call Convention 101, where we kind of get ourselves prepared for the state convention. And we have with us today Roger Harris, who serves as parliamentarian to the NCRSP board. And he is a great authority on parliamentary procedure and does a wonderful job in presenting it in language that we can understand. And we also have with us Sheri Strickland-Mulling, who is the chair of the New Business Item Committee, who will give us some guidance on how to write a new business item. So it requires minimum editing once it is submitted. And hopefully there won't be too many of them at our convention. Right, Sheri?
Hopefully.
Okay. Which of the two of you would like to go first?
I was always raised ladies first.
Okay.
That's what I thought I remembered with that Sheri got to go first, but I thought I'd give a chance.
Okay.
All right. Am I able to share my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do I need to do anything from my end?
Not that I'm aware of.
You go to share down at the bottom, I think, and click on that.
Oh, there we go. Got it. Okay. It's coming. Hold on. It tells me I have to grant access. Hold on. Access. Hold on.
It says you don't have access?
It says I have to grant access to Zoom. Hold on.
I think we all need a 14-year-old on staff whenever we do this.
A minute.
Well, they're always updating the apps and stuff, so where it was the last time may not be there this time.
That's right.
There we go.
Oh, you're seeing all my mess now, huh?
Not nearly as messy as mine.
Hold on. It's still telling me that I need to pressing to bypass. Okay, allow it. I'll allow it to bypass if it'll let me get to my desktop. Okay, so you see my screen. There we go.
Oh, beautiful.
Sorry.
It's okay.
We'll get there, I promise. I have too many things opened, apparently. I was doing some work before we got on. All right, are you seeing my?
We are seeing new business item PowerPoint.
That's lovely. Hold on, let me get it to read. There. Good?
Good.
Oh, thank you for your patience. Okay, so it is my pleasure to talk to you about new business items today. And as Lavita mentioned, hopefully by spending a little time now, we can save a little time when we get to convention or leading up to convention by having new business items that are already very well written, not confusing, meet the criteria for a new business item, and would be good to go to the delegates to the RA. So the, are you, let me close this. Nope. That, no. Sorry. Okay, there we go. So a working definition of a new business item. A new business item is a proposal over which the division, that being NCRSP, has jurisdiction. NBIs related to substantive policies or programs shall be specific in nature and must be accomplishable within 1 year. So let's think first about the jurisdiction of NCRSP. So for example, we would not want to have a new business item that said that the North Carolina General Assembly will, because we don't have jurisdiction over the North Carolina General Assembly. but we could request that a letter was written to the North Carolina General Assembly by our state president, state president, because we do have jurisdiction over that. That belongs to us, it comes from us. So MBIs should also be related to our policies and our programs. So they should be things that would further the policy or the programs or the goals or the mission or the vision of NCRSP. We want NBIs to be as specific as possible. We want to avoid confusion by the delegates who will be reading and trying to decide if they are in favor or not in favor of this NBI. We want it to be language that's accessible to everyone, so everyone will be able to understand what we're asking to happen. And it must be accomplishable in 1 year. And the 1 year time frame for our NBIs is from the end of one convention to the beginning of the next convention. So that's the year that it has to be accomplishable within.
Sheri, do you see a hand up?
I do not.
Mark has his hand up.
Okay. Yes, Mark. Oh, I do see it now.
I just wanted to point out that we have the ability to encourage anyone we want to encourage to do anything we want to encourage them to do at any time. So as an influential organization, that is going to be a primary goal of many of our new business items, is to encourage the state legislature to do this or that, or encourage others to do other things.
Sure, yes, absolutely. Though I would also encourage that if you're writing such a new business item, that you're very specifically about the who that is going to do the what. So if you just say that NCRSP will encourage the General Assembly to do something, then we don't know who within the NCRSP is actually going to take control or authority over that NBI. So my recommendation would be, even with encouraging the General Assembly, that we would still be asking someone within NCRSP to be doing that encouraging, and we would want to also include by what method we would like for them to do the encouraging. And for me, that is a way to ensure that somebody takes control of that NBI once it's passed, that someone or a specific committee or the executive board or the administrative council, someone is going to take control over that NBI and ensure that whatever the representative assembly wants to happen does happen. So that, again, being as specific in your NBI as possible about who is going to do what and how they should do it. Okay, is that good? All right. So all NBIs brought before our representative assembly should begin with the NCRSP Representative Assembly. And that's because once an NBI has been moved and seconded, it then belongs to the Representative Assembly to do with it what it will. So if an NBI passes, the Representative Assembly is the owner, if you will, of that NBI. And so all NBIs should start with the North Carolina Representative Assembly. And most often, in NBIs, it's a request that the NCRSP is going to be, Representative Assembly is going to be making. But as Mark just mentioned, another word to use might be encourages, it might be asks, it might be directs, but most often we see requests in NBIs. So it would be correct to start an NBI with the NCRSP Representative Assembly request that the Board of Directors do something, or the NCRSP Representative Assembly asks that the NCRSP staff do something, or the NCRSP Representative Assembly encourages the NCRSP President to do something. But it's not correct for an individual like me to request something in an NBI, or even for a region or a local to ask. So start each NBI with the NCRSP Representative Assembly. All right, and as we were just talking about, the NBI should direct an action to be taken, and it should state who will be taking that action. So it would be correct for the action to be to direct, and we could direct the president. We could ask the board of directors. We could request that the staff. We could encourage the leadership. All of those would be correct. Action to be taken by whom? It would not be correct for a new business item to be a statement of belief. It would not be correct to say that we would like somebody to do something, or that we think something, or that we feel something. So this is not a time to talk about how we feel about something. We're stating an action to be taken by whom? Use language as concise as possible, keeping it clear and simple, and avoiding using pronouns are also good best practices. Again, I know many of our members are excellent writers and can use all kinds of beautiful language and adjectives and adverbs and, make something sound very lovely. But an NBI is not the time for that. So keep your language as concise as possible, as clear and simple as possible. If you're the person making an NBI and you really want that NBI, it's important to you and you want it to pass, then as clear and as simple as you can make it will help the people who are going to be voting on your NBI to truly understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. It also helps to avoid lengthy debate about wordsmithing in NBIs. So if you're the maker and you've made it as clear and as simple as possible and use concise language, then it will discourage people from trying to wordsmith what you've written. You should also avoid using pronouns. In an NBI, it's not appropriate to say I or me, but it also is helpful if you don't use pronouns like it or they. You just go ahead and say who it is or what it is and who they are, so that people aren't trying to go back and see what noun that pronoun is supposed to be matching up with. Just repeat the noun again to avoid any confusion in your NBI. An NBI has to be accompanied by a rationale. And this is when the submitter of the NBI explains why this is an NBI that they believe should be approved by the Representative Assembly. You're trying to explain to the Representative Assembly how this NBI is going to help NCRSP. You can use first person when you write your rationale, because the rationale is not the part that we're going to be debating on the floor of the NBI of the convention. We're going to be debating the actual language in the NBI. So a little more leeway in the rationale about using pronouns or putting some emotion in it or some passion in it. That would be appropriate in the rationale. Your NBI also has to be accompanied by a cost implication. And it is the responsibility of the submitter to determine a reasonable cost estimate before you submit that NBI. Because if the NBI committee looks at it and you said it wouldn't cost anything, and we think, well, I don't see how that could be accomplished without some expenditure of funds, then we're going to ask you to go back and try to figure out what that really would cost. So by doing the legwork up front, by talking with the NCRSP staff, talking with officers or other NCRSP leaders to be sure that your NBI really can be accomplished within the existing budget framework is important before you turn that NBI in. Now, certainly some NBIs do have no cost implication. If we're asking somebody to write a letter, if we're asking somebody to make calls, to do letters to the editors of their newspapers, to have an article in the Panorama, those things all already could be accomplished within the existing budget framework. But there certainly are others. If there's a potential that NBI would require some kind of legal counsel or research or additional staff time, then that we might have to hire for, then you would need to come up with an estimate of what that cost would be. So on the convention floor, when it's time for the new business items, once it's been announced that we're getting ready to debate NBIs, then everyone will have their paperwork with the NBIs. And so if you're a submitter of an NBI, you need to check and see, what number your NBI is and be sure you're available and on the floor and your seconder is available and on the floor when your NBI comes up. And the submitter of the NBI should go to the mic, move to the mic, and should start first by saying, which I didn't put right here in the script, but always say your name, first and last name, and your local. So Sheri Mulling, Wake County, and then say, I move new business item number, whatever one it is that we're on. You don't need to read it out loud to people. Everybody has their paper in front of them with the NBI. So you just need to move it by number. And then the seconder also says their name and their local, and then I second. And then immediately the submitter gets to speak to the motion by explaining what the NBI would do and why it should be approved. And then other delegates have the opportunity to speak for or against the NBI or to take any of these other actions that I've got listed here under number 2. So once the NBI has been moved and seconded, then it belongs to the Representative Assembly to take action. And there can be one action that might be taken before the NBI ever comes to the floor, which is if the submitter themselves makes the decision to withdraw that NBI, or they have decided to modify the NBI after the NBI has already been printed. So if that's the case, then we would let the Representative Assembly know what the change has been in the NBI from the way that it's printed. So once it's moved and seconded, and discussion takes place, then another action that could be taken would be a vote, and to vote that NBI up or down. So either it would pass or it would fail by a vote of the delegates. It can also be referred to a committee or a governing body. So a delegate might make a motion to refer. That is also an action that can happen to an NBI. And a delegate might also make a motion to amend an NBI. So if an amendment is presented and seconded, then that amendment would be discussed. So the discussion on the main motion would be on hold until the amendment was discussed and voted on. If the amendment to the NBI passes, we go back to the main motion as it has now been amended. If the amendment fails, we're not finished. We still have to go back to the main motion and vote it up or down in its original language. And certainly those of you who've been around a while know that one NBI can be amended multiple times. And as a delegate, you have to pay attention and keep up with what what amendments have been presented, what amendments have passed or failed, what the main motion now looks like as amended, or are we back to the original language of the NBI? And we'll do our best, of course, to reiterate what it is we're voting on. I try to always be sure if I'm chairing that you know exactly, that the delegates know exactly what they are voting on each time as we hear and then dispense with amendments one way or the other. Okay. So if you are considering submitting an NBI, then it has to be, you have to complete the 2026 NBI form that's found on the NCRSP website. The form is in several versions so that hopefully no matter what kind of computer or technology you're using, there's one that you can download and type on and then email to me. So if you want to go ahead and submit anytime now, you know that you have an NBI and you want to just go ahead and get it written up and sent to me, then you can certainly do that anytime between now and convention. But we will also have paper forms at convention at the NBI table on the convention floor. They can be handwritten and then turned back in. Just really take your time and be legible in doing that, and then turn it back in to the NBI table. So the deadline for submission of an NBI is the close of the first business day of the RA. So for this year in 2026, it's March the 26th is the first business day. And we're going to call close of the first business day 4:30. That's been typically when we've tried to wrap up the first business day so that there's adequate time to prepare for the banquet. So by 4:30 on March 26th, anytime between now, if you want to email me, and the end of the first business day, you can submit an NBI. This is what the form looks like, or one of the versions. They all pretty much look like this. So it talks about mailing by snail mail to me by February 25th, but that option is over at this point. So at this point, you could either email me or you can just wait until we get to convention and do it there. So the February date is so that we could go ahead and print any of the ones that had already been submitted up to that point in the convention manual. But we have not had any NBIs to be submitted. So all of the NBIs that we'll be voting on will come in separate piece of paper. You're not going to find any of them in the convention manual. So we'll be sure that everybody has a copy on the convention floor. And if you've lost yours or can't find yours, then come to the NBI table and we'll make sure to have extra copies available. But anyway, this is what the form looks like this year.
Sheri,
Yeah.
this is Tama. Before you continue, the first business day is Wednesday, March 25th.
Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. It's correct on the NBI form, right? But it's
Right.
wrong
Correct.
on my slide. Okay. Thank you, Tama. I will make sure to correct that before I send it to Julia to post on the website. Okay. Wait a minute. I'm making a note. March 25th. Okay. I bet it was the 26th last year and I forgot to update that slide. So I apologize. Okay, so for example, these examples are written in the form that I'm hoping we will see our NBIs in when they get turned in. So for example, the first one, again, starting with the NCRSP Representative Assembly, requests is a good word to use to direct the action. Who are we directing? the NCRSP president. What do we want that president to do? Write an article on the best practices of a high-functioning local for publication in the fall 2026 edition of the Panorama. In the second one, we're requesting that the board, so the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that the board of directors do what? Consider hosting a hospitality room on the evening before the first day of business of each RA. Now, we talked about sometimes NBIs can be referred to an appropriate committee or legislative body of NCRSP, and this could be one potentially that might get referred to the convention committee for their discussion, and then they would send it on to the board. Or the delegates may decide that they want to vote it up or down on their own. So, and then number 3, the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that NCRSP staff mail each new member that joins NCRSP by the end of 2026 a coffee mug and a lapel pin. Probably some cost implications there. So the submitter would need to do their due diligence and see what it would cost to be able to do that. But again, the Representative Assembly is taking an action. We're saying who's going to do something and what it is we want them to do. So these might not be quite as well written, and we'd probably send the submitter back to maybe work on them a little bit or help the submitter figure out how we could change these to be appropriate MBIs. First of all, we don't start with we, and we don't say believe. So that part would need to be changed. We believe that NCAE should build a new headquarters building as soon as possible. So we might be able to turn this into an MBI if this is something that a delegate feels really strongly about by saying something like NCRSP Representative Assembly asks the NCRSP president to write an NBI to submit at the NCAE convention, and then say what that might be about. So it's usually not that these things aren't good potential MBIs, they just need to be written differently. The NCRSP Representative Assembly sincerely requests that We Are the World be adopted as the NCRSP theme song because it is beautiful and meaningful and everyone loves it, and I get choked up whenever I hear it. So, you know, the feelings and the I pronouns don't belong, but we could say the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that the convention committee considers adopting We Are the World as the NCRSP theme song, and then period. The rest of that stuff doesn't belong there. It could be in the rationale, though it might be even a little much for a rationale, but it could go. It could go in the rationale instead. And then the NCRSP Representative Assembly requests that NCRSP staff and leadership work to increase membership. So this one, I think the main problem with this one is just that it's very vague. We do know who we want, staff and leadership, but work to increase membership is not actionable in a way that we would then be able to say, did the staff and leadership do what we were directing them to do? So just find a way. We need to find a way to make this more accomplishable, more direct, and what would you want them to be able to do within the 1-year time constraint of an NBI. So this one really sounds more like goals or programs than a 1-year NBI. So again, the NBI form is on the NCRSP website. To find it, if you haven't been on the website in a while, if you just go to our website, in the menu on the left side of the homepage, you can click 2026 convention, and then underneath there, you can click MBI 2026, and all three versions of the MBI form is available there. And then this is just the direct link. So you can go straight there by using this link. And again, this PowerPoint will be posted to the website. But I guess the funny thing would be that you're going to find it at this link, because I was going to say you can use the PowerPoint to go directly to the website, but that's where it's going to be posted. Okay. All right. So my final word, I guess, is that if you want to write an effective NBI, for me, an effective NBI is one that clearly states who is being asked to do what, and by what means are they being asked to do it. And then, of course, it has to be accomplishable within 1 year. But if you've done all that in your NBI, then you probably won't be asked to rewrite it in any way. And when it goes to the delegates, they will have a clear understanding of what it is you are asking them to do. All right. That's all I have. Do we have questions?
You did well.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. We could still have questions, but I'll just go ahead and stop sharing now. Okay. All right.
All right. Levita, am I up? Yes.
You're muted, Levita.
Yes, Roger, you're up, and thank you, Sheri, for that informative session.
Continue to share. Is that working, Levita?
I can't see the full slide, but maybe that's because of my view and not something you're doing.
Okay. All right. If it does not clear up, then let me know. I appreciate everybody being here. My name is Roger Harris. I'm your state parliamentarian. I've been a parliamentarian for a number of different civic and governmental bodies over the year, but I do not believe in embellishing my resume. I am not a licensed parliamentarian. I am a member of the North Carolina Association of Parliamentarians and the National Association of Parliamentarians. And what I want to talk about this afternoon is kind of a real basic parliamentary procedure, just kind of parliamentary procedure 101, and talk about that just a little bit. We do have to have rules. That's what parliamentary procedure is. There's different kinds of rules. And just because you see one organization doing it one way, it doesn't mean that others are going to do it the same way. I've got a thing up there that says your screen sharing is paused. Can you guys see an ugly guy with glasses?
I can see you, Roger.
Okay, good. All right.
But I still cannot see the full screen of your PowerPoint though.
Okay. Let me see what
It cuts it off after NC on the right-hand side, and on the left, it's cut off the first part of parliamentary and the first part of procedure.
All right, let me try it again. Okay.
This is Hazel Sanders. I can't see it either.
Well, darn, give me just a minute, see if I can figure out what I have done wrong.
There you go.
I think that's it. Now,
Okay. Can you see that then?
Yes.
I can
All
see
right.
the.
All right.
yeah.
Okay. That'll work then. We do have to have rules. There's different kinds of rules. And as we say, the House and the Senate, they have their own. A lot of organizations have different rules. Sometimes a chairman is allowed to vote, and sometimes a chairman is not allowed to vote. These rules go back to the Greeks and the English Parliament. The English Parliament developed a lot of these things, and that's why it's sometimes and frequently called parliamentarian rules. Parliamentary rules goes back to the English Parliament. And, you know, the one that we're most familiar with is Robert's rules. And there really was a Robert. It was a general, a brigadier general, lived in the 19th century, fought in the American Civil War, published his book after the Civil War, and started out with just a small 50-page book, and then it went up to 176 pages, and now it's over 700 pages. But when you think about a 700-page book and you think, goodness gracious, that's like trying to do the Bible or something. Most of that does not have anything to do with what we do in NCRSP or your churches or your civic clubs or anything. A lot of that has to do with writing bylaws for corporations and all kinds of things. So you really don't have to worry about trying to learn all 700 pages. Most of that is not going to be relevant to what we're doing. But there is a purpose to parliamentary procedure. We've talked about that before. It does these three things really. It allows an orderly discussion and debate. You know, there's a difference between an orderly discussion and a bunch of seventh graders arguing about who's got the best basketball team. You don't want that kind of discussion in a meeting. You do want to be orderly. You want to have reasonable debate. It does protect the rights of the minority. Even though someone has a view that is not shared by many people, you want them to have the ability to share that view. I remember an old Henry Fonda movie called 12 Angry Men. You guys might remember that. And it was a jury, and he was a minority and was able to convince everybody his way. So you want to protect the rights of the minority, and it does allow for the majority to rule, because that's important that we wanted to do that. There is a pecking order to parliamentary procedure. And that is, there's some things that outrank the others. When I was a little boy, if I wanted to climb a tree in my backyard and my brother said it was okay, but mama said it wasn't, well, is it okay or is it not? Well, the answer is it's not okay, because mama trumps the brother. So even though you may have things that say different things, documents say different things, you look at the priority. Our highest priority in our organization is the NCRSP Constitution. If our bylaws or our new business item or whatever it is in conflict with our Constitution, then the Constitution is going to win. That's our priority. Secondly are the NCRSP bylaws. And then third are Robert's Rules of Order. So it comes in that order. Robert's Rules of Order is important, but it does not trump our bylaws or the NCRSP Constitution. The most common thing that we do, and Sheri talked about this with the new business items, is we have motions and main motions, and that's true in church business meetings or NCRSP or anything. And it usually begins with the words, I move that. I move that we do whatever it is we want to do. Sometimes you'll have folks, and they're not very familiar, but we're all friends, and they'll say something like, I think we should adjourn at 5 o'clock, or I think we should have refreshments at the next meeting. You help those folks out. We're not enemies. So you say, you know, Rebecca, would you like to make that in the form of a motion? Would you like to move that we adjourn at 5 o'clock or whatever? And you help them out. But most of what we're going to get are going to be motions that begin with those three words. I move that we do something or other. This is very much like what Sheri talked about with motions and new business items. You want to state clearly what you want the organization to do, not just a vague idea. You don't want to have a motion that just says, I move that we support public education. That doesn't tell what we're going to do. That would be true the same with a new business item. You want it to be specific. Here would be an example of a motion, just like a new business item almost, a motion that would be in order. I move that we increase dues by $10 effective January 1st, 2027. Another member seconds the motion. The reason to have another member second the motion is because that keeps somebody from putting out an idea that nobody even wants to talk about. It's just something crazy. And if nobody seconds the motion, then it dies. A person who seconds the motion does not necessarily mean they agree with the motion. They just mean that they think that is worth talking about. I second the motion. Let's talk about it. The person that seconded the motion may end up voting against it in the end, but they want us to talk about it. And then there's a very important step that sometimes we forget, quite honestly. The chairman states that question again. The chairman says it has been moved and seconded that we increased dues by $10 effective January 1st, 2027. Whenever that statement is made, then it makes it clear to the body what it is that we're debating, what we're talking about. And like Sheri said earlier, it no longer belongs to the maker of the motion. It now belongs to the assembly. Whenever we make the motion, just like with a new business item, the maker of the motion has the right to speak first. Only one main motion can be considered at a time. That gets into some kind of trouble sometimes is somebody makes a motion that we increase dues and somebody else says, well, what we really need to do is to change our meeting location. I move we change location. That should be ruled out of order. Take one main motion at a time and you debate that motion. And then when all debate seems to be done and everybody's done, the chairman restates the question, and it's called putting the question. They put the question. The question is on the adoption of the motion that we increased dues by $10 effective January 1st, 2027. And then you immediately go to a vote. In most organizations, including the NCRSP, proxy votes are not permitted. So if somebody says, well, Janet is not here, but she said she wanted to vote for this motion. Well, that's too bad. If Janet's not here, Janet can't vote. Proxy votes are not permitted. There are 8 steps then to handling a motion and dealing with a motion. And that is, first, you got to be recognized by the chair. The motion's got to be clearly stated. The motion is seconded. The chair repeats the motion. They put the question out there. Then there's debate. When that debate is over, the chair restates the motion. The motion is voted on, and then the results of the vote are announced by the chair. So those are the simple steps of getting a motion out there and getting it moved. There is, yes, ma'am.
Excuse me. Should the slides be advancing, Roger?
Yes, they should. Are they not?
No, we're on the one, who's Robert?
Oh my goodness. I'm glad you spoke up. What in the world am I doing?
Okay.
You see a lady standing there saying,
Yes.
I move to amend?
Yes.
All right. All right. Let's see what happens when I push the button if that slide changes. Did that change?
It does. Yes, it
All
did.
right. Thank you, Tama. Thank
Cooking
you.
with gas.
All right. Now we're working. Now we're working. So once you've done that, sometimes an amendment will come up. And that was talked about with the new business items. Amendments can do one of 3 things, really. They can add to a motion, they can subtract words from motion, or sometimes it will do both. And it works like this. Our motion that we've got before the floor right now says, I move that we increase dues by $10 effective January 1st, 2027. And somebody wants to change that. They state the amendment. I move that we change the effective date from January 1st to June 1st. Now that amendment also has to be seconded. And just like we talked about with new business items a minute ago, once that happens, the chairman restates the motion. It's been moved and seconded that the main motion be amended by changing January 1st to June 1st. At this point, that's the question that's before the body, not the main motion, but only this amendment that changes things from January 1st to June the 1st. The maker of the amendment, just like the maker of the motion, has the right to speak first. But there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. You'll hear me speak that a couple of times. That's one of my little pet peeves. And we'll talk about how you can handle that later. But there's no such thing as a friendly amendment. If you want to make an amendment, then you stand up and you make an amendment. Debate continues on that motion, on the amendment that's there. And then finally, the chair puts that motion out. Is there any further debate? The question is on the adoption of the motion to amend the effective date from January 1st to June 1st. The assembly votes on that, and then the chair makes a statement. Either it passed, it's been adopted, the main motion's been changed, and this was talked about earlier with the new business item, or you say the motion to amend has not been adopted, and we're back to the main motion. Once that's happened, then debate continues just as it did before, and you just continue. as we think about how to debate and the way that we run a good assembly or business meeting in church or whatever, generally no one is permitted, and I say generally no one is permitted to speak a second time if there's someone who has not had the opportunity wants to speak. When we were in elementary school, we called that taking turns. So nobody can have a second turn as long as somebody else is wanting to speak. Now, if nobody else is wanting to speak and somebody's wanting to speak a second time, then that can be okay. Comments should always be addressed to the chair. You speak everything to the chair. You give your argument to the chair. You debate to the chair. You don't look at another person in the room and say, well, Rebecca, I think you're entirely wrong about this. You look at the chair and you speak to the chair. That keeps it from becoming an argument and continues to remain debate. Comments have to be germane. They have to be related to the issue that's going on. Otherwise, the chair should rule it out of order. So if we're debating, again, if we're debating whether to raise dues or not by $10, and somebody says, well, I tell you what the problem is, the place that we meet doesn't have enough chairs. I think that we need to find another place to meet. The chairman ought to rule them out of order. Our debate right now is on raising the dues, not on a location. They must be germane. They have to maintain what it is we're talking about. I heard a speaker one time say they have to use the F word, and that is focused. The comments must be focused. That's your F word in a debate. They've got to be focused and they've got to be germane to what we're talking about. You debate the issues, not the personalities. Now, I've seen even NCRSP where sometimes personalities come out. You never question what somebody's motive is. If you disagree, then you disagree. That's okay. But you don't say, well, my friend from Cleveland County always wants to do this. No, we're not going to debate personalities. You'll be ruled out of order. You debate the issue. You don't debate the personalities. Generally, a member is limited to speaking 2 times on a single motion. That can be changed, but we'll get into that in advanced parliamentary procedure. But usually you're limited to speak 2 times on a single motion. And then finally, members may not yield the floor to another. You see that a lot of times on C-SPAN. If you ever watch that, they do that in the House and Senate. They operate by entirely different rules. Robert's Rules of Order do not allow you to yield the floor to another. If somebody else wants to speak, then they need to get recognized and they can speak, but you don't yield to somebody else. The other thing that sometimes comes up, and this is one that you have to handle kind of delicately, and that is when it's time to end debate. We have all been in meetings where debate has just gone on long enough and it's time to hush and move on. It's time to have a vote. And when I was growing up, we called it time to fish or cut bait. And it just gets to be time to do that. And somebody will stand up and they will say, I moved the previous question. Or sometimes you'll hear it, they'll say, I call the question. Well, understand all that is a motion to close debate. They're not in charge. They don't own the meeting. The only thing they have done is they've expressed their view that we need to stop debate. So they moved the previous question. That one must be seconded as well. It cannot interrupt the speaker. The maker must be recognized by the chair. If you've ever been in a meeting and somebody in the middle of the room just hollers out, I called the question, well, that person's out of order. They've got to be recognized by the chair and they have to call the question that way. The motion to call the previous question is not debatable. Obviously, be dumb to debate whether to continue debating. So you don't do that. The motion for the previous question requires a 2/3 vote. And here's why. Because if you close that debate, there may be people who wanted to engage in debate. You are taking away their right to engage in debate. That's going to require a supermajority of 2/3. And here's kind of a rule of thumb, and I know Tama has studied parliamentary procedure as well. Anytime you're messing with debate, whether it's limiting debate or limiting the number of speakers or extending debate, anytime you're messing with debate, it almost always requires a 2/3 vote. And that's especially true whenever you're closing debate. So if you can remember that. A point of order, we hear that sometimes, point of order, that requires the chair to make a ruling on a breach of the rules. Somebody thinks something is happening that's not quite right. You state what you think is wrong and the chairman makes a ruling. That ruling is going to be either the point is well taken or the point is not well taken. For example, somebody says, point of order, we've debated this 10 minutes and the limit was supposed to be 5 minutes. That will be a legitimate point of order. The chairman has to make a ruling on a point of order. Or somebody says, you said a majority and it takes 2/3. Anytime you think the rules are being broken, then you make a point of order. The other question that comes up, and it's a privilege question, it's called, you want information on a parliamentary rule. You have a parliamentary inquiry. I've got a question. For example, somebody can stand up and say, is it in order at this time to move the previous question? Or is it in order to adjourn? Or something. They're looking for parliamentary guidance. And the chair should never answer hypothetical questions, but parliamentary inquiry is in the preview of the chair to answer those. We know that we rule by majority. Majority means over half of those people that are present and voting, those that are casting the votes. And that includes the chairman. The chairman has the right to vote if he or she desires. Now, where I've seen this one most often made a mistake is this. I've heard people say a majority means half plus one. It does not mean half plus one. And here's why. Here's some math for you, okay? I know we got some math teachers in the room. The Cleveland County Board of Education has 9 members. We have 9 members of the Board of Education. If it was half plus one, think about this. What is half of 9? The answer is 4.5. 4.5 plus 1 would be 5.5. So if 5 members voted yes and 4 members voted no, if it was half plus 1, the 4 would beat out the 5. So that's why it's not half plus 1. It's just over half of the voters that are there present and voting. Half plus 1 is not it. It's just a majority over half of those that are voting, which gets us to another question. Well, what about a tie? If I've got 20 people in the room and 10 vote yes and 10 vote no, what do you do with that? Well, the answer is 10 voting yes is not a majority. Majority means over half. 10 out of 20 is not over half. It's just half. So a motion would fail that it has a tie vote. So here's some tips and reminders. I want to wrap up and give you time for questions or time to go get a drink of water or whatever. But tips and reminders, some things to think about. And the first one is this. Roger Harris is not the chair. I was not elected by anybody to be the chair of this convention. The president is still the chair. I'm just an advisor. The chairman can follow my advice. The chairman can disregard it. Sometimes I will give advice to the assembly, but I never, ever attempt to take over the assembly. The chairman or the chair is always the chair, no matter what. Majority rules, but we want to remember the minority has a right to be heard. All members are entitled to fairness and courtesy, even if they're saying something that the majority disagrees with. We have to give them time to be heard and to speak, and quite honestly, the opportunity to change your mind. Sometimes they will present something and you'll change your mind. Remember that only one matter can be considered at a time. You take up only one main motion at a time, and that keeps things from getting confusing. The maker of the motion always has the right to speak first. Most of the time they want to do that. Sometimes they don't, but they have the right to speak first, and the chair should always recognize that person first. Remember that governing documents trump Robert's rules. So if Robert's rules says that you do A, but our Constitution says you do B, then B is going to win. The Constitution is going to trump Robert's rules. And then finally, remember that a tie is a lost vote. You don't have to do it again. You don't have to have another vote because a tie is a lost vote. And here's some of my funny little pet peeves, things that just trouble Roger Harris and have as long as we're doing this thing. There's no such thing as a friendly amendment. I've gotten on to Betsy Wells before. She loves friendly amendments. Here's how you handle what would ordinarily be a friendly amendment. Suppose this happens. Somebody introduces a main motion and they misspelled a word. They misspelled the word, whatever, January. And you offer that as a friendly amendment. Well, the motion has been made and seconded. It belongs to the assembly. If somebody says, well, we got a misspelled word, the way the chair can handle that is the chair can look at the assembly and say, are there any objections to correcting the spelling? Nobody's going to object. But then the decision was not the chair. It's not the maker of the motion. It was made by the assembly. They had the opportunity to object. And so you can handle that by unanimous consent. A motion to call the question is not an absolute power. I've been in meetings, and you have too, where somebody in the middle of the room hollers out, call the question. And the chairman will say, the question has been called. No, it hadn't. somebody made a motion, but the question has not been called. You can't call out from the audience. It's got to have a second and requires a 2/3 vote to close off debate. Majority means over half, not half plus one. And you ignore members that don't vote in a count. They just don't matter. It just doesn't matter. I've been in meetings, and you have as well, where they get the number of yes votes and then they get the number of no votes. And then for some reason, they want to count the abstentions. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. For example, suppose you're in a meeting and you've got 100 people in there and a motion is voted on. 10 vote yes, 9 vote no. Did the motion pass? Yes. Over half of those present and voting voted yes. So 10 yes, 9 no, and 81 sat on their hands. That's okay. Ignore the members that choose not to count, not to vote. That just doesn't matter. They have the right not to vote if they don't want to. And a body should not vote on a treasurer's report unless it is being referred to auditors. When a treasurer gives a report, you have no idea if those numbers are right or not. You just accept it as information. And that's true in our local organizations as well. So if you're getting ready to send it to auditors, then you have to vote on it. But other than that, you don't. There's a book that I would recommend, and that is Robert's Rules of Order, the revised edition. In brief, you can get this thing for about $8 or $9 on Amazon. It's a little short paperback book. And even with that one, you don't have to read the whole thing. If you read chapters 2 through 4, and it'll take you about 30 minutes to do that, I guarantee you're going to know more than 99% of any meeting you go to. You're going to know enough parliamentary procedure that you're going to be considered the expert if you just read chapters 2 through 4, a little bitty paperback book, and honest, even if you're a slow reader, then you can just take about 30 minutes and get that done. Do I see a question up there? Yes, Mark, do you have a question?
Roger, will you make a brief statement about the usual purpose of the motion to reconsider?
Yes, a motion to reconsider is one that is made in the same meeting. It is made by somebody that voted in the prevailing side, whichever the prevailing side was, whether they won or whether they lost. And you can bring a motion back to reconsider if something has happened that you think that your side will that something needs to be looked at. It has to be made by a member of the prevailing side to keep you from just considering the same thing over and over and over. Now, sometimes, Mark, that can be used as a parliamentary trick. If you see that your side is going to fail, then you vote with the other side so that you're on the prevailing side and can take it up later. But that's one of those little parliamentary tricks. But you're right.
It also locks in the previous vote.
Yes, it does. It locks in that previous vote as well. That's exactly right.
Thank you, Roger.
There is a website that I would recommend. If you Google parliamentary procedure, there's a couple of million of those out there. One of the best that I have seen is jimslaughter.com. It's a really good website. The book that you see him holding is the one that I have beside my desk all the time. It's Robert's Rules of Order. It's that 700-page book. He has lots of charts, lots of handouts. Most of it on his webpage is 100% free. It is absolutely free, and he's got lots of good things. A couple of pages we've had in our convention book the last couple of years have been from Slaughter's book, and that is in his webpage. Some parliamentary motion guides that are there, just some quick references. There's another one on parliamentary motion guides, and it very quickly tells you whether it can interrupt the speaker. Does it require debate? Is it amendable? What kind of vote does it take? And just a really, really good resource that we've got there. But parliamentary procedure can be as complicated as you want. My general rule is you try not to make it any more complicated than you have to. If it's just 5 or 6 people sitting around a table, you don't need it at all. Just talk with your friends and figure things out. If it's a group of 20, then you use parliamentary procedure just kind of to get things done. But, we don't need to have lawyers come into the room. In a representative assembly, we're going to be a little more strict than we are just in a county meeting, but never be more strict than what you have to get the work done. Here's some contact information from me. I know a lot of times questions come up later. I'm happy to share my cell phone number with you. You can text to me. You can give me a call. I'm serve at your pleasure as your parliamentarian. I'll try to answer questions if you have those come up. And I've also will offer this. If you have a local meeting in your county and you think this one is going to be particularly challenging, or you've got a regional meeting, and whatever the issue that's coming up, you think it's going to be particularly challenging and you'd like to have me present in the room at that meeting, I'm happy to do that if I can. You let me know, give me a few days notice, and I'll get in my car and I will not charge you a nickel. I just consider that part of my service as a parliamentarian. So I will drive to whatever your location is. If you've got one that's coming up and you know what the issues are and you know the personalities in your group. If you think it's going to be particularly tough and you think my presence would be helpful, I'm happy to do that. And I promise I won't charge a nickel. If you got a buffet lunch, I'll have a piece of chicken. But beyond that, that's all I will do. That's all I will do. So maybe that's all I've got, but I'll entertain any questions, or if things come up later, there's my contact information.
We certainly do appreciate all your insights, Roger, and especially the fact that you, like many of the members of NCRSP, volunteer our services to the organization for the greater good of our membership.
Right.
Are there any other questions?
This is Jacqueline Green. There are not any questions, but I can attest to Roger, because he knows that I will pick up the telephone regardless of where I am and call him and talk to him and explain everything and give me your advice. And he takes that time to do that. So, Roger, I am indebted to you to a piece of candy. I think I told you, I said, if I had a piece of candy, I'd give it to you. So
Listen,
I want to say thank you so much.
You're welcome, Miss Green. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And listen, I'll do an awful lot for a moon pie.
A moon pie.
A moon pie. You don't know what a moon pie is, girl?
Yes. If I didn't, I'd find one, even if I had to Google it.
Thank you, Levita.
You're most welcome, and thank you, Sheri, for giving of your time to channel our new business items this year, and for both of you for presenting today, along with thanking our staff person, Carol, who's not feeling very well, but she logged on, and I do appreciate that and got us started. And I hope she gets to feeling better, because I know she's got a lot ahead of her in preparing for the convention. Our next Wednesday workshop is April the 8th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon as well. Since we're now into daylight savings time, we're going to the afternoon sessions for a little while. And it will be on the legislative session. We haven't quite finalized the exact name of the topic, but it shall be very informative and interesting as well. And also this afternoon, we have a bonus. We have invited the 3 candidates for the NCAE office of Vice President to come and present to you. We did have the candidates back in January, but at that time we only knew of 2 candidates, and there are actually 3. So Linda asked me to come back and invite them back again. So they will be back this afternoon at 4:30. If you'd like to join us to hear from our 3 candidates for NCAE Vice President, we certainly would appreciate having you in the audience. It's very important that we begin to recognize the relationship that we have with the NCAE, because it is basically our mother organization. We are just a division of NCAE, and we often kind of think of ourselves as our own organization, and we're an organization within an organization, just like NCAE and NCRSP are under the bigger umbrella of NEA. So with that, I thank you for your time this afternoon to attend. I thank our presenters, I thank our staff, and I hope to see you again along the way. Have a good afternoon and enjoy some of this